Hello and welcome to Droix. Today we are checking out the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus Android handheld. We will be unboxing it, taking a closer look at the device and then checking out the OS, followed by an overview of the emulators and Android games for their performance. Grab a cup of tea, it's a long video. Inside we have the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, which we will show in more detail shortly. Underneath is a user guide which gives a brief overview of the functions. There's a screen protector to fit on your device if you wish to. And last but not least is a USB Type-C charge cable. The Retroid Pocket 2 Plus measures 5.9 by 3.1 by 0.98 inches and weighs 194 grams. The display is a 3.5 inch 480p touchscreen with a 4:3 aspect ratio. It's great for retro gaming. To the left is a non-clickable left analog stick and classic D-pad. To the right of the screen are 4 gaming buttons and the right non-clickable analog stick. Below the screen are home, select and start buttons. On the top of the device are left and right shoulder and trigger buttons. There's a micro HDMI port for connecting to your display to play on a larger screen. There is a USB Type-C port, volume buttons and finally a power button. On the bottom is a micro SD card slot protected by a rubber cap. There's also a 3.5mm headphone port. The Pocket 2 Plus is available in 5 colours: 16-bit, retro, orange, indigo and black. We will compare the technical specifications to the original Pocket 2 shortly. Physically, the actual devices are very similar. However, if you look closely, you will notice that the D-pad and gaming buttons are slightly more raised on the 2 Plus. This gives a more responsive and tactile feeling when using the controls. The Retroid Pocket 2 Plus features the Quad-core Tiger T310 and a PowerVR GE8300 GPU. It has 2 gigs of LPDDR4x RAM and 32 gigs of eMMC storage. It runs Android 9 with built-in support for the Google Play Store. Battery life will vary depending on what you are doing. We left Daytona USA on the Dreamcast running on the Attract mode for 1 hour and it used around 20% battery. When first booted, you are presented with a welcome screen that guides you through the initial setup process, which is a nice touch. However, once you are left in the custom launcher, you're pretty much left to your own devices to work out what to do. We will have an easy to follow guide on our blog for setting up the launcher to play emulators. Personally, I ditched the Retroid launcher and used the standard launcher, which gives you instant access to your apps. It does mean that you miss out on the nice interface, but I found it faster to configure the emulator separately without having to scan for box art, etc. You can navigate around the menus via the controls or by the touchscreen. You may find that some apps do not support controls and you are forced to use the touchscreen. You can connect the HDMI to your TV or monitor for some large screen gaming. There's some options in the Android settings menu if you want the device's display left on or switched off whilst using it. It simply works without hassle and we had no issues when switching between menus and apps, for example. First, we will start off with what most people want to see: the emulators. The Retroid Pocket 2 Plus can handle all the 8 and 16-bit systems just fine. Thanks to RetroArch, you can install many cores for everything from the Fairchild right up to the PSP. You can be assured that for the majority of cores pre-PlayStation era, they should work great. We will be concentrating on the more recent gaming systems to see how they perform. We are using a mix of app-based emulators and RetroArch cores. We start off with the 3D dual screen emulator Citra and Retro City Rampage DX, which plays perfect. The basic games should run fine, but you will find that the more advanced games will generally struggle. A good example of this is Sonic Generations, which is essentially unplayable. With a few settings tweaks you can improve the performance a bit, but don't expect a massive improvement. The PSP worked very good with the majority of games I tried. They were all running at full speed and were very playable. On a decent number of games you can increase the resolution to 2 times to improve the quality. God of War is however still struggling. It's a common sight on these handhelds. Next we check out the M64Plus FZ Emulator along with GoldenEye 007. I can't play this game for shit, but it runs at a good speed and is definitely playable. V-Rally Edition 99 is up next. Again, it is very playable and there's no game breaking lag. Overall, the console is supported very well and there's a large number of playable games which previously on other handhelds were not playable. Next is the Dolphin Emulator. We start off with Burnout 2, which runs at a good speed. Gauntlet Dark Legacy also works very well and is more than playable. My recommendation for many of the games is to change the resolution to around 70% and you will see a good increase in performance. Not every game will work, but many do. While it is possible to run games on the more advanced console that the Dolphin Emulator supports, you won't find a great deal that are playable. If you stick to the more basic games such as Cave Story, then they will run great. Otherwise, you will need to decrease the resolution and tweak other settings to get it anywhere near something playable, even if you're lucky. The Dreamcast emulator Redream is up next. Sonic Adventure 2 blazes along easily at full speed with no issues at all. You can change the settings in the emulator to improve the graphics quality. It's much the same for Daytona USA. Pretty much every game I tried ran perfectly. There's a small number of games that do have some issues, which may be due to the emulator itself rather than a performance issue. The Pocket 2 Plus comes with the free with ads version of Yaba Sanshiro 2 SEGA Saturn Emulator. It's definitely worth buying if you play a lot of Saturn games. Nights into Dreams is very playable, as is Sonic R. There is some frame skipping being used on many games, but it somehow smooths it out and makes it look far nicer than it would otherwise. I was using melonDS on RetroArch, but you can also use DraStic, which works great. The dual screen handheld overall works okay. You will find a few games with some issues, such as Sega Superstars Tennis. Try the alternative RetroArch core and that usually resolves it. The recently released Aether SX2 works on the Pocket 2 Plus, so we can try out a few PlayStation 2 games. Please be aware that the emulator is in the early stages of development, so many games are broken, underperforming or not supported at all. Despite the beta state of the emulator, it performs very well for some games. You will definitely need to play around with the settings though. Sonic Heroes is an example of a game that works great. With a few tweaks you can get it running at a very playable frame rate. Crash Twinsanity is not very playable as an example. The emulator will improve over time and we expect to see some great developments for it this year. PlayStation emulation is overall pretty much spot on now. I tried many games and did not have any issues at all, either with compatibility or performance. You can tweak the graphics settings to get nicer visuals and it won't affect the performance too much. My favourite retro handheld is last but not least. I tried many games and none of them had any issues either with compatibility or performance. Here is some footage from Contra Advance and Street Fighter Alpha 3, which all look great on the 3.5-inch display. I spent some time trying a bunch of Android games that support game controllers. Overall, I did not have any issues with games failing or performance issues. You may find a few games where the text is hard to read on the smaller screen though. With some games playing in the background, I will sum up my thoughts on the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. Overall, I think it's an amazing handheld. It supports a large number of systems right up to PSP, and it generally runs the emulators very well. For the newer systems, there are some bottlenecks in performance, which are simply out of the scope of this handheld for them to be improved on. But I think with emulators such as Aether SX2, we will see some nice improvements over time and more playable PS2 games to enjoy. Considering the price of the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, especially compared to more expensive devices such as the RG552 and GPD-XP, it is an amazing performance versus price. The Retroid Pocket 2 Plus can be a bit troublesome to set up if you're a newcomer to Android or emulation in general. We will have some guides on our website to help get you started. If you want something plug and play, then we would recommend an Ambinic based device such as the RG552. If you don't mind a little playing around with the setting up, then you will get some amazing results, even beating the performance of the RG552. That wraps up our review of the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus handheld. We hope you found it useful. You can learn more and buy your Pocket 2 Plus at droix.co.uk. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and we hope to see you back in our next video.